I used to believe that love, like a well-worn song, softened with time. Not vanished, just quieter. A gentle hush replacing the symphony. That was how I made sense of the silence that had settled over our home like dust on forgotten shelves. The way Tom and I passed each other in the hallway, smiling faintly, sometimes not at all, like strangers who once shared a story but had long forgotten the plot. We had been married for 7 years. 7 years. Long enough for habits to replace discovery. Long enough for late-night laughter to be exchanged for the flicker of television screens and the sound of cutlery clinking against porcelain in muted dinners. Long enough for love to lose its urgency and become polite. Tom was always a man of purpose. Precision and logic wrapped in the clean-cut confidence of a man going somewhere. His career at a prestigious consulting firm wasn't just what he did, it was who he was. Every day he climbed higher, one promotion at a time, and each step seemed to take him further away from me. His eyes were always on something distant, something ahead, never here. Never with me. He'd come home late, briefcase still in hand, eyes lit not with curiosity or affection, but with the lingering glow of PowerPoint slides and conference calls. He'd nod, mumble long day, and disappear behind the glass wall of his home office. Sometimes I'd wait for him to come to bed. Most nights I didn't. At first, I told myself this was love growing mature, seasoned. But deep down, I knew better. I wasn't growing beside him. I was disappearing behind him. My voice, my thoughts, my dreams, they had all begun to dissolve into the background, until I felt more like furniture than a partner. Present but unnoticed. As a freelance UX designer, I worked from home. It was a life of quiet autonomy, one I had once cherished. The flexibility, the creativity, the soft rhythm of working in cozy clothes with coffee always within reach, it had been a dream. But over time, peace without connection morphs into something else. Solitude curdles. The silence began to echo. Some days, I wouldn't speak a single word aloud until Tom came home, and even then, the words felt like dust in my mouth. I started narrating my own life in my head, like I was watching it unfold from a distance. I became a stranger to myself. And then one rainy Thursday evening,
David.
It wasn't dramatic. No electric spark, no movie scene collision of fates. Just a warm conversation at a design conference mixer after a panel I almost skipped. David was charming. Not in the polished, rehearsed way Tom had mastered for boardrooms, but in a genuine, present kind of way. He listened. Not just with his ears, but with his eyes, his posture, his pauses. It was disarming. We talked about user psychology, minimalist interfaces, and the poetry of problem-solving through design. But somewhere between pixels and personas, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, seen. That night, I walked back to my hotel room and sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding. Not because I had met someone new, but because I realized how completely I had disappeared in my own life. I wasn't falling in love with David. Not yet. I was waking up to the hollow space inside me that had gone unnoticed for too long. That whisper in my heart, that something was missing. It was no longer a whisper. It was a murmur. It was the beginning of a reckoning. And I knew from that moment on, things could never go back to the way they were. David was Tom's boss. I'd heard his name in passing, always paired with that peculiar blend of admiration and weariness. People spoke of him like a force, unshakable, exacting, and deeply respected. The kind of leader who left a trail of excellence and exhaustion wherever he went. I never imagined I'd find myself truly noticing him. We first met at Tom's promotion dinner. It was a celebratory evening, one I had dressed up for with more care than usual, though Tom barely noticed. David approached with a presence that filled the space before he even spoke. He shook my hand, firm, intentional, and looked into my eyes with a kind of quiet intensity. Not intimidating, not flirtatious, just real, present. We exchanged a few words. Nothing extraordinary on the surface. But he asked me questions, not about Tom, not about us.
He asked about me.
What I did, what drove me, what I loved. I remember the way he listened. Not with the polite detachment people often reserve for spouses at corporate events, but with genuine curiosity. His attention was still, focused. It had been so long since anyone, especially Tom, had looked at me like that. Weeks passed. Life moved on in its usual blur. Then Tom invited me to another work dinner. The kind he often did out of obligation, more than enthusiasm. I almost declined, but I went. And David was there again. This time, fate, or the seating chart, placed us side by side. Conversation flowed effortlessly, like water seeking its natural path. We spoke of design, of creativity, of the hidden beauty in overlooked moments. He told me about the sketches he used to draw in college, about the way music changed the way he thought. There was an ease between us, a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. When he laughed, it was unguarded. When he asked questions, they landed softly but deeply. And all the while, Tom sat at the other end of the table, too preoccupied with quarterly results to notice I was even smiling. It started quietly. A message the next week, linking to an article on minimalist design. Then another about a photography exhibit he thought I'd like. A few weeks later, a lunch to talk about a potential side project. Then coffee under the safe umbrella of networking. I told myself it was innocent.
Professionals connecting.
Creative minds sharing space. I convinced myself Tom wouldn't care. He hadn't asked about my projects in months. Our conversations, once rich with dreams and late-night debates, had dwindled to scheduling logistics and reminders to pick up dry cleaning. But deep down, I knew this was no longer about networking. It wasn't about the project. It was about being seen,
Heard. Valued.
Emotional affairs rarely erupt in flames. They don't come with fireworks or scandal. No, they grow like ivy, slowly, quietly, in the cracks of neglect. In the silent spaces where love should have lived but no longer did. David saw the parts of me that had long gone unnoticed. And in that gaze, in that attention, something sparked, something I hadn't felt in a very long time. It was never about desire. It was about being found. I didn't see it coming, not clearly, not at first. But looking back, the signs were there, scattered like breadcrumbs, leading me somewhere I hadn't meant to go. David made me feel visible again. It started small. A glance held a second too long. A compliment that felt genuine. I caught myself wearing lipstick I hadn't touched in years, the shade dusty but still vibrant. I laughed more freely, listened more deeply. I lingered in conversations with him longer than I should have, reluctant to return to the quiet that waited at home. He didn't declare affection, nor did I. But every interaction with David felt like standing in warm sunlight after being lost in the gray for far too long. It wasn't love, not exactly. But it was something undeniable, something stirring. Then came the gallery invitation. David knew I loved art.
Tom didn't.
Or perhaps he'd forgotten. He declined, again something about deadlines, reports, some spreadsheet he had to finish. So I went alone. David was waiting at the entrance, wearing that easy smile like I mattered. Like he'd waited just for me. We wandered through the gallery slowly, shoulders brushing once or twice, by accident or maybe not. We spoke of brushstrokes and symbolism, the hidden language in oil and canvas. I found myself saying things I hadn't said in years. Thoughts I didn't even know I remembered. I felt alive, as if color had returned to a life that had faded to grayscale. That night, I came home and sat across from Tom as he ate his dinner, eyes fixed on his phone. I had so much to share about the art, the light in the gallery, the way the conversation had danced effortlessly, but the words died in my throat. I said nothing. Instead, I texted David. One message became two. Then a conversation. Then regular moments stolen beneath the surface of my life. Each time we met or spoke, it was under a harmless pretense.
Coffee.
A walk. Advice on a book I mentioned once in passing. I told myself it was innocent, but deep down I knew. Each time was another thread unraveling from the fabric of my marriage. I convinced myself the line hadn't been crossed, but the truth was, I was already miles past it. Emotionally, I was gone. And Tom noticed. One night, I laughed at something David had messaged me. Something clever, something small that still found a way to light me up. Tom looked up, his eyes catching mine. Quiet but sharp. "Who are you talking to?" he asked. I hesitated. Then I lied. He didn't respond. He didn't accuse. He just turned back to his meal in silence. But that silence that said everything. It was a gray afternoon when I saw David for the last time. We met at a quiet little cafe tucked between two forgotten streets, where the clinking of porcelain cups was barely audible over the soft drizzle tapping against the windows. The world felt hushed, as if even the sky had decided to mourn something neither of us could quite name. I sat across from him, fingers curled around a mug of coffee gone cold. My voice was barely above a whisper when I said, "This has to stop." He didn't protest. He didn't plead. He only looked at me, really looked, and asked, "Are you happy?" And just like that, everything in me stilled. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe that ending this firelit corner of my life that had been both solace and sin, would bring peace. But the truth clung to the back of my throat unspoken. I didn't know the answer. 2 days later, the truth caught up with me. Tom found the messages. The ones I thought I'd deleted, hidden, erased from the fragile architecture of our life. His hands trembled as he held the phone, his voice breaking like something inside him had cracked wide open. "Did you love him?" he asked. And I hesitated. Did I love David? Or did I love that, in a world where I had become invisible, he had seen me? It didn't matter. Not anymore. The betrayal wasn't just the affair, it was every moment that led us here. Years of drifting, of sharing space but not souls. Of quiet dinners where we filled the silence with weather reports and work updates, pretending it was enough. We tried. We really did. Therapy. Late-night talks that turned into dawn. Apologies and hopeful plans. But some distances can't be crossed once the bridge has rotted beneath you. Eventually, we let go. Not in anger, not in blame, but in weary surrender. Not because of one man, but because we had both vanished inside the shell of a marriage that had long since stopped being home. As for David, we never spoke again.
No angry goodbyes.
No long, drawn-out closure, just silence. Sometimes in the quiet moments, I wonder if he ever thinks of me. If he remembers the way I laughed when I let my guard down, or the way I cried the first time he asked me what I wanted. But I don't dwell on it. Not often. Because here's what I've come to understand. The real heartbreak wasn't losing Tom, or walking away from David. It was waking up one morning and realizing that somewhere along the way, I had lost myself. That the woman I used to be, the one who dreamed, who burned with her own light, had slowly, quietly disappeared beneath the weight of being everything for everyone else. And by the time someone finally saw her, she was already gone.